From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
The South Coast often feels like a forgotten part of Massachusetts, with an economy that has struggled while Boston flourishes. The responsibility of reinventing Fall River falls on the shoulders of Mayor William Flanagan. He's reaching out to businesses from Amazon.com to Market Basket directly in an effort to recruit them. Seeking a third term, what's his vision for his city? Our guest on the first half of Newsmakers, Mayor William Flanagan. Then, with public trust in Congress at an all-time low, a bipartisan group of legislators have come together to form the so-called No Labels Coalition. Among its members, Congressman David Cicilline, a staunch Democrat. This week, they introduced their first package of bills. Our guest on the second half of Newsmakers, U.S. Congressman David Cicilline. Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the panel, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi and Eyewitness News analyst Arlene Violet. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Mayor, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, and I'm honored.
Let's start with what I talked about in the open there. You are seemingly making a big push to bring in corporations. I mentioned Amazon, Market Basket to replace, hopefully, outgoing Shaw's, which closed its doors, or they will close their doors. I'm wondering what your pitch is to them, and are you offering them anything, tax breaks, special deals, anything like that?
Well, the pitch to them is we have a workforce that's ready to work. We're also situated geographically in a good position in Fall River. We're near a waterway, we're near major highways, we're near two airports, Logan and TF Green, and we have a fairly reasonable tax base when you compare us to other communities within the area. And so we're out there working hard every day, pitching our city to companies, hopefully to get them to locate in our city and to create jobs and to expand our tax base. And you have to offer companies incentives to come to your community.
Like what?
Well, one of the things you offer them are tax increment financing, a TIF. If you're going to create so many jobs, we're going to reduce your taxes. And then we're going to hold you responsible for those jobs that you said you're going to create. But I'm also in constant contact with Secretary Greg Bielecki, who's the Secretary of Economic Development for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts under Governor Deval Patrick. So I need the state also to help giving an incentive package, because when companies are looking to come to Fall River, I'm just not competing against the greater Fall River area. I'm competing against other states and other parts of the globe. So it's an all hands on deck effort. You need the local level, the state level, and sometimes even the federal level to help get a company to locate within your community.
Specific to Amazon, what's been their response?
Amazon was seriously looking at Fall River. At this point, the discussions have chilled a little bit. I'm not sure if they're starting to look elsewhere in the Northeast or are putting a chill on possibly expanding. But we're not just stopping with Amazon. We're in negotiations and discussions with other companies, bigger in some cases, to locate within our community. And sometimes we're showing the same parcel of land. So we have a good parcel of land that may fit your needs. We're going to show it to company A, but we're also going to show it to company B and C with the hopes that somebody's going to locate there.
Can you give us a hint as to who companies A and B and C are?
I wish I could, but in some cases they do not even tell you who they are. They'll send in an advance team, they'll scout out an area, and they keep that very close to the vest, because if they tell you they're a blue chip company, sometimes maybe the discussions or negotiations will change from company to company. So, you know, our main goal is to create jobs, get people back to work, and get taxes into the community.
Mayor, I'm from Bristol County, Massachusetts myself, and every election cycle, politicians who want to be governor come down and say they're finally going to build the South Coast Rail. I remember Deval Patrick saying it in 2006. As far as I can tell, there aren't any train tracks in Fall River yet. What is going on with that project? And, you know, are people there, should they ever believe that no matter what they're told on election season, it's actually going to get built?
You are hopeful that when a candidate comes and speaks to you and say, we're going to get you on a train by 2021, they mean what they say. But the project comes down essentially to money. It's a $1 to $2 billion project to connect the city of Fall River to the city of Boston, also New Bedford and Taunton along the way. And right now there's not really a funding mechanism in place to do the commuter rail based upon the legislature not accepting the governor's increase on taxes. And that was a hotly debated topic in the State House. And
do you think the governor was going on the right track with his proposal for transit financing?
the governor was very ambitious. He put a lot forward. Maybe he should have picked which way he wanted to go and focused more on that particular issue. He did a very ambitious education package with a very ambitious transportation package. Both have called for an increase in taxes, whether it was an increase on the gas tax or increase in RMV fees. The legislature got very showed some apprehension in raising taxes, and that stalled and didn't really go anywhere, and they're still not able to come together on passing a budget up in Boston. And that affects cities and towns because a city like Fall River relies upon local aid. So if the legislature is not able to either veto the governor's budget or work with him to get this going, cities like ours are affected by it. So hopefully the senators and the representatives can get together and decide what they're going to do.
It sounds like though the train is still a long way away. No sign of that on the horizon.
There's no sign of it on the horizon, and that's disappointing because if you look at other communities that are connected to Boston, their quality of life is not better than our community. However, their unemployment rate is lower than our community. So, you know, Fall River has been struggling with a double-digit unemployment rate. It was about 19% when I first took office in 2009. We've been able to bring that down to about 12.5% here today in 2013. Still way too high, still way too many people out of work. But one of the reasons why I think a community like Brockton, for example, has a lower unemployment rate than us is because they have an opportunity to search for jobs in the greater Boston area via commuter rail. So even though the commuter rail is not moving forward, one of the things I've asked the Secretary of Transportation, Richard Davey, is can we shore up the lines to help expand freight? We have a lot of mills and Fall River factories that rely upon freight service. So if we can have a strong freight service coming into this community, that may be able to help them with their business and also create jobs in our community.
There's a landlord that recently had his second property shut down. Apparently, he has about 38 properties in Fall River. Could you tell us what potentially can happen to him in terms of criminal charges and also relative to the other stock of housing he has in Fall River? What's the quality and the upkeep of those properties?
We're very aggressive in holding absentee landlords responsible within our community, and the person you speak of is David Koval. He owns numerous properties within the community, and we shut 2 of his properties down recently.
Yes.
There are a number of sanitary code violations at the property.
But what about criminal charges toward him, and what about the rest of his properties? Are they similar, or are these abnormally properties?
Unfortunately, a lot of his properties are similar. They're havens for criminal activity, and he can face criminal charges. I go in and I speak to these tenants. I go right into their apartments and talk to them one-on-one, and they say, Mayor, we don't want to live here, but we really don't have other choices. Some of these people have long criminal records. Others are suffering from mental illness, and they have a lot of obstacles in their life that they have to overcome in order to move their life forward. And I hear stories of the landlord taking their EBT cards, taking their government benefits, and then holding them and using them in order to pay down their rent. Also, one of the properties that we recently shut down was a boarding house, and at midnight that license expires, and if he continues to operate that property as a boarding house, he could face criminal charges. So one of the things my legal department is doing right now is they're gathering all the facts, and then they'll share those facts with the Attorney General. They'll share it with the Department of Transitional Assistance, and if there is a basis for criminal charges, hopefully the state agencies or the federal agencies go forward on them.
Mayor, here in Rhode Island, there's been a bit of a hot button issue surrounding the Cicilline River Bridge tolls. For those that live on the East Bay, it's been somewhat of an emotional roller coaster. First, the tolls are going to be going in. General Assembly changes mind. Now it looks like 10-cent tolls just as a placeholder. You live on, you're the mayor of a city on the other side of those tolls. Do you support them or not, and why?
I don't support them, even though those tolls are probably going to benefit the city of Fall River.
How would they benefit Fall River?
Well, if you're looking to go to Newport or Bristol and you live in the greater Fall River area, but now you're going to be assessed a toll to go over the bridge, you may think twice about doing so. Also, I speak to a lot of business owners who go to Middletown or Newport or Bristol to do work. And they say, you know, I'm not going to go bring my business into those communities because I don't want to have to pay a toll each time I go over that bridge.
So if it benefits the city, why are you against it?
Well, morally, you know, my heart goes out to the people who live in those communities. They feel like they're left out. They're not close to Providence, so they feel like they're being left behind, similar to what happens sometimes in southeastern Massachusetts. We're about 60 miles away from Boston, and my people feel left out sometimes too, that they're not connected to Boston when it comes to issues like commuter rail. So even though it's something that's probably going to help southeastern Massachusetts and keep some of our business within the community, from a moral standpoint, you got to feel for the people of those communities because they're being hammered by these tolls.
Mayor Flanagan, the list of candidates for mayor this fall in Fall River is still being finalized, but you're definitely running for a third term. Will Richmond, the political reporter there at the Fall River Herald News, says your third term looks almost certain for you, but your name often comes up about running for higher office. You've been rumored as a U.S. Senate candidate, perhaps Attorney General. Do you see yourself running for higher office, perhaps as soon as 2014?
Right now, my focus is on the city of Fall River. If I do a good job here, my future will take care of itself for me. But there's a lot of issues going on in our community, from economic development to safety to education, and the job's not done. When I first ran in 2009, I gave my word to the people that I'm going to be there and to help improve the quality of life of the city I was born and raised in. So right now I have no other thoughts about seeking a third term, being reelected with the vote of the people, and doing a good job.
Speaking of mayors, I see that you took a play from a playbook of Mayor Cienci, former Mayor Cienci. With this marinara sauce, you're doing Portuguese kale soup that you say is your grandmother's recipe.
Yes.
So I guess she comes from the Azores. It's been around for 3 months. The profits are supposed to go to charity. How much has your soup enterprise dished out to charities?
We've been able to raise approximately $8,000, and that will go back in the form of scholarships to students. And come September, as we enter the new school year, I'll sit down with the guidance counselors of the high schools and have them select students who they believe are going to benefit from a scholarship. So, this was a great endeavor. I partnered with Blount Fine Foods, which is a
Warren?
leader in
Is it
soup
made in the
sales.
Warren facility?
It's actually made in the Fall River facility.
Okay, all right.
So it's made
Better
in
be
Fall
right.
River.
So the tolls will not affect your soup if they go into place.
I hope not. But it's made in Fall River, and the sales of it go right back to school children.
Can I ask, Mayor, I think you actually have modeled yourself to some extent on Mayor Cienci. Hopefully not everything that happened during his career for your own legal sake, but can you give me a sense what's your relationship with Mayor Cienci, and sort of what do you think he did well that is important for a city mayor?
Being a mayor, you talk to other mayors, and Mayor Cienci has become a friend of mine. We have dinner regularly, and I get an opportunity to listen to him and learn from him and get some guidance sometimes. He was the mayor of the capital city of Providence, and if you look at Providence, a lot of good things have taken place here, from economic development to tourism, and it's really a city that was deemed the Renaissance city under his administration. So being a good leader, you listen to people and you take their advice, and if it's good advice, you implement it. So there's also rumors that he may possibly seek election as mayor again.
We told our own Dan McGowan.
Ed, what do you think? You're close with him. Is he going to do it?
I don't know.
Should he?
Only he knows. Well, that's up to him to make that decision. And it's really up to the people whether or not they want to have him back.
Would you encourage him as a friend to do it if Mayor Tavares moves on?
It's tough to say. I don't have that intimate knowledge at this time if he has the ambition to do it. It's a tough job. I often joke that being mayor is a 25-hour-a-day job, 8 days a week. So it's constant on the go, and if you don't have it in here to do the job, you shouldn't put your name on the ballot.
Fall River Mayor William Flanagan, thank you so much for joining us this
Thank
week.
you.
We appreciate it.
Great to be here.
When we come back, Ted Nesi goes one-on-one with Congressman David Cicilline via satellite from Washington, D.C. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Earlier this week, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi interviewed Congressman David Cicilline via satellite from Washington, D.C. The main topic is about a bipartisan group of legislators that formed something called the No Labels Coalition. Here's that interview now with Ted and Congressman Cicilline.
Congressman Cicilline, thanks for joining us from Washington today.
My pleasure.
So before we get to the legislation coming out of the No Labels group, I know some Republicans up here who've followed your career for a long time are skeptical about you being part of a group called No Labels because they think you're usually pretty willing to label the Republicans as the problem down there in the House. What do you say to people who have that point of view?
Well, look, I think there's no question that we have a group of Republicans in, a group of Tea Party Republicans in the Republican caucus who have made progress very difficult and have stood in the way of principled compromise, and I'm going to continue to stand up and fight for the things that I believe in. What No Labels is an organization of 81 people, about half Democrats, half Republicans, one independent, that have been meeting for almost a year now, that are committed to trying to solve problems, to come together as Republicans and Democrats, even with strongly different views on issues and passionately committed to certain viewpoints, but to be willing to listen to each other and to sort of find some way to solve problems and find some solutions to the big challenges facing our country. So doesn't mean you don't feel strongly about issues. It doesn't mean you don't stand up and fight for the things that you know are important to your constituents, but it's a willingness to sit with people on the other side of the aisle, try to find some ways to work together. We put forth 9 bills today that we launched as part of our first legislative agenda. But, there are a group of folks in the Congress, particularly led by the Tea Party, the extreme faction of the Republican caucus, that believe compromise is a dirty word, that won't try to reach some common ground to solve the big challenges facing our country.
So let's talk about those 9 bills. I think I saw more than 70 Democrats and Republicans are taking part in this No Labels group to put these bills forward. They're about make government work. We obviously don't have time to go into all 9, but sort of give me what's the reasoning behind the package, and then which ones are you particularly excited about?
Sure. I mean, really the focus is how do we make government more accountable and more transparent and work better, and particularly how do we make Congress function better. So one is the no budget, no pay, a requirement that we pass a budget and pass appropriation bills on time, or members of Congress don't get paid for the work that they're supposed to be doing. There's another bill that will address this issue of veterans' backlogs by creating a unified medical record system for the VA and the Department of Defense to help accelerate the review of veterans' cases. There's a bill that creates an opportunity to reduce wasted energy in federal buildings. So they're all things, I think, most of these bills are things that most people would see as common sense, that will help reduce the cost of government, improve the efficiencies of government, help us operate better. And again, this is just a beginning. What's, I think, even more important is it's an acknowledgement that we've got to find ways to work together. We have many big challenges in our country, and I think the only way we're going to meet these challenges is if we find some way to work together to get things done.
Let me ask you, what's the outlook to actually pass any of these? Have you gotten a sense of if the Republican leadership would be willing to bring any of them up?
Well, all of these bills are introduced by a Republican and a Democratic sponsor, so they have bipartisan support in their introductions, and I think it's too early to know whether the House Republican leadership will bring them to the floor, but I hope they will bring most of them. Most of them, I think, are pretty common sense and not very controversial, and I think most of them are things the American people will support.
Let me now have you use some labels. The immigration bill passed pretty strongly in the Senate last month or a couple weeks ago with, I think, more than 60 senators supported that, but it's very unclear if the House is going to take that bill up at all. Some Republicans saying they want to start from scratch and write their own bill. What's the outlook on immigration there in the House? What are you hearing from your colleagues? Is the bill going to pass?
We have, there's been a working group that has been working for several years, Republicans and Democrats in the House, working on putting together a comprehensive immigration bill. My expectation is that that bill will be introduced in the coming weeks. I hope we will pass immigration reform in the House. It will then go to a conference committee where the Senate bill is, and out of that I hope will come a bill that both houses can support. I think it's very clear we have got to pass immigration reform. We have a broken immigration system. The Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan office, did an analysis and said that passing comprehensive immigration reform will reduce the federal deficit by $200 billion over the next decade. It will help to secure our borders. It will be sure that there's a path to citizenship. It will fix a very broken immigration system. So I think there is a growing consensus of that in the House. I think the challenge will be for the Speaker is he's got to be willing to stand up to the far right of his caucus, to the Tea Party extremists who don't want any effort to fix the broken immigration system, and he's got to be willing to stand up to them to do what's right for our country.
I'm curious, I know Hispanic voters were very important to your victory last fall in November, and that's a growing share of the 1st Congressional District. When you were on the campaign trail, what did you hear about most from folks who are very interested in immigration changes? What were they most concerned about?
Well, I mean, people want to figure out a way to bring 11 million Americans, aspiring citizens rather, out of the shadows and to create a path to citizenship, to bring these people into the economy so they can work and pay taxes and contribute to the growth of our economy, as the Congressional Budget Office said they'll do. We also want to be sure it's an immigration system, reform which unites families, and you know, families have been torn apart by the current immigration system, and so we want to have an immigration system that brings families together, and to have a system that people can, again, find a path to citizenship if they pay their taxes, go to the end of the line, play by the rules, that they haven't committed any crimes, and all the other components. And also that it contains a provision for border security, that we enhance our border security so that we ultimately solve this immigration problem for our country. People want that. It's important to Rhode Island. It's important to our country. If you listen to the business community, they have been strong advocates for this because they're competing for the best and brightest minds, and we're seeing so many young people who are educated here then leave because they're forced out of the country because of their lack of proper documentation, and they're starting businesses in their own countries rather than starting businesses here. We want to be a country that continues to attract the best minds and the entrepreneurs and new startup companies. So this is an urgent issue for our economy, for the sake of families, and because we need a system that's fair.
Another hot topic in the House is agriculture, nutrition, with the food stamps and the Farm Bill. The first version of the Farm Bill failed. Republicans joined with Democrats, conservative Republicans did, to kill it. So they passed a new bill with no food stamps at all that just deals with farms. You obviously are opposed to that. What do you think happens next, and where do food stamps stand in the House?
Yeah, look, this was one of the most shameful days in Washington. This partnership between the agricultural industry and people who care about the working poor and children and families who rely on supplemental assistance through the SNAP program, they came together and had a farm bill for many, many years together. What the Republican House leadership did in this case was they put forth a farm bill that excluded the reauthorization for the SNAP program, cut out food stamps and food assistance for 47 million Americans. Veterans, seniors, children, the working poor, but they reauthorized big agricultural subsidies and even plussed up some of those subsidies, which was a terrible way to do it. And for lots and lots of working families who are living on the edge, who are trying to make ends meet, they rely on the SNAP program for basic nutrition. And you know what the Republicans have suggested, oh, we'll take up the SNAP program later. The breaking apart of those things, I think, was a big mistake. I obviously voted against it. Lots of people spoke very passionately about it. It was bad for the many, many families and children and veterans and seniors who rely on that program for basic nutrition assistance.
I want to ask you also why it's the other chamber, the Senate, but this week we had a big breakthrough with the deal on filibustering over there in the Senate, and the outcome was that something Senator Jack Reed's been fighting for a while is to get a confirmed head of the new Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was set up in the Dodd-Frank financial law, and that's finally now going to have someone in place there. With that office actually getting up and running, what do you expect to see, and what should people look for out of that now that it's really getting going?
Well, the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau is a really important part of the Wall Street reform that is designed to really provide some protection from consumers, both in the area of home mortgages, consumer lending, transparency in the financial services area. Very, very important when you think about the kinds of abuses that we saw that led to the near financial collapse of our country. This bureau will be the agency charged with really ensuring that there's transparency, that there are good safeguards and good oversight of all these financial instruments and financial services. A very important victory for consumers, long overdue, and now I think there's no question that the new leader of that bureau can get to work ensuring that we protect American families and the financial security of American families.
Finally, Congressman, since the last time you were on Newsmakers, we've had some dramatic changes on gay rights. Rhode Island is legalizing same-sex marriage starting August 1st, just in a few weeks, and then the Supreme Court, of course, struck down the Defense of Marriage Act. You've been active on these issues for 2 decades now or more. What's your feeling after the last couple of months, both in your home state and there in Washington?
Well, it's a source of tremendous pride that Rhode Island joined the other New England states in affording full marriage equality. Very exciting to have been in Washington when the Supreme Court found that DOMA was intended to discriminate against gay and lesbian couples and violated the basic equal protection that our Constitution affords all Americans. So I think those are both great, a great decision and great action by the General Assembly and the governor in signing it. And I think it's just one more step on a march to full equality for the LGBT community. I'm very proud of what the Rhode Island General Assembly did, what the governor did in signing that, what the Supreme Court decided. But I think it's a reflection of what's happening all across the country. A notion that discrimination is wrong, discrimination against the LGBT community is not acceptable to most Americans, and I think this is a reflection of that.
And do you expect to be going to a lot of weddings over the next few months?
I expect I'll be invited to a few for sure. I hope to be.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much for joining us from Washington.
Thanks, Ted. Great being with you.
Congressman David Cicilline and our first half guest, Mayor William Flanagan from Fall River. Ted will be filling in for me next 2 weeks on Newsmakers. Try not to be too sad. For Ted Nisi and Arlene Violet, I'm Tim White. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.